everyone. Welcome to Chat with the Lawyer, where lawyers give practical advice to everyday people. And today we have a celebrity in the house, another one. We have Kasey Edwards, who is a renowned bankruptcy lawyer, and we're going to talk about money, money, money. That's the word on everybody's mind, and we can talk about it, how a lawyer has interaction with money and our finances. So, Kasey, tell us a little bit about your practice.
Hi, I'm Kasey Edwards. I'm an attorney with Gilman and Edwards. We have a few offices. One of our main offices is in Landover, Maryland. We handle bankruptcy cases, tax controversy cases, home retention processes, Chapter 7s and 13s, short sales, and loan modifications, a whole lot of consumer finance issues.
All right. So now you mentioned Chapter 7, Chapter 13, and we know Chapter 11. Now we're like, all these chapters, what do they mean?
Technically, there are 5 chapters of bankruptcies, but what we do most of the time are Chapter 7s and Chapter 13s. We do Chapter 11s when necessary, but most people just need Chapter 7s and Chapter 13s. A Chapter 7 bankruptcy case is for an individual who has consumer debts, and their consumer debts are overwhelming. And the overwhelming debt leaves them unable to pay their monthly expenses. Mm-hmm. So when we have clients who come in and they want to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, normally they have credit cards, personal loans, and sometimes they own houses and sometimes they own cars. And all the bills every month exceed their income. A Chapter 7 is technically a liquidation bankruptcy case, and what that does is, to the extent that you have assets of value, the bankruptcy court will liquidate your assets to pay off your creditors. Now, the assets can go from equity in a home, equity in a car, priceless jewelries, artwork, antiques, collectibles, anything that has value that you can sell would be sold at a liquidation sale with the bankruptcy court to pay off your creditors. I would say 90% of the Chapter 7 bankruptcy cases that we handle do not have assets. And clearly, part of coming to our firm would be that we would do an analysis of what you own and what it's worth before we would allow you to file bankruptcy, so that we could tell you in advance if liquidating some of your assets would be the answer. Contrary to Chapter 7, we have Chapter 13. And a Chapter 13 is a reorganization. And sometimes, again, when you can't do a Chapter 7 because you have assets of value, you may do a Chapter 13. And a Chapter 13 is where we reorganize what it is that you do own, and we have you repay to your creditors an amount of money over a period of time not to exceed 5 years equal to the value of the asset. So Chapter 13 is an asset case. And in some instances, you may do a Chapter 13 even if you don't have any assets, because you want to keep something. You want to keep a car that you might be behind on payments. You want to keep a home that you might be behind on payments. Or you just want to repay some debts. For example, taxes. Some taxes are priority and they have to be repaid. So Chapter 13 is a vehicle by which you can repay any tax debt that is owed to the IRS or any other jurisdiction.
Now, are there things that cannot be forgiven that we should be aware of?
There is a long list of things that aren't discharged, and discharge is essentially what you are looking for in a bankruptcy filing. The discharge is when you are no longer legally responsible to pay the debts back. But there is a list of non-dischargeable items. I think most known is the student loans. Everyone goes, oh no, we can't discharge student loans. Student loans that are federally funded are non-dischargeable, and that's the key, if it's federally funded. So if you got the student loan from Sallie Mae, which was backed by the Department of Education, that is a non-dischargeable debt. Some other non-dischargeable debts are some tax debts. There are some tax debts that you can get rid of, but the key is, how old are these tax debts? If the tax debts are more than 3 years old from the time you actually file the tax debt, they can be discharged. But if you just filed to 2013 and you come running to the bankruptcy court saying, I need to file bankruptcy because I owe the IRS, you will still unfortunately have to pay that tax debt back. Because just like any other creditor, the Internal Revenue Service and Comptroller of Maryland and the other taxing jurisdictions get an opportunity to get their money from you. So you can't go and file the taxes and then the next day go and file bankruptcy. So Tax debts that are less than 3 years old are non-dischargeable. And there's a long list of other non-dischargeable debts, which can include DUI, fines and fees, child support, alimony. Those debts are non-dischargeable debts.
Interesting. Well, you said that when someone comes to you, you determine whether they can file a Chapter 7. So what does it look like for someone that you look at their finances, you look at their assets, and you say, look, there is no Chapter 7 was not going to work for you. Now, we need to know who we are so we can so we can know to save the time.
I'm very fair. And I don't necessarily like to encourage everyone to file bankruptcy. Sometimes it is more beneficial to you and your future just to pull on your bootstraps and kind of work this out through a better budget. And that is key. Budgeting is absolutely key. I get on a soapbox, and my clients will tell you that Kasey will come in there and say, listen, you went out and bought this Bentley and you really needed a Hyundai. Hyundais are fabulous. I love them. And sometimes we need to be better at making financial choices and decisions in our lives. We make horrible financial decisions. It is human nature to always want the best thing. It is human nature to always want the best thing. I love Giant, I love Safeway, but sometimes my budget says I need to shop at Murray's. Shop at Shoppers, and we need to instill some really basic, better financial decisions in our lives. I love all of Prince George's County. I think it is fabulous. However, I prefer to keep my money in my pocket. Some of the living areas I cannot afford to live in. And we need to be better at that. And so a lot of people say, well, I don't want to live here. I don't want to live here. I don't want to live here. Well, I'll tell you what, live where you can afford and spend the extra time that you'll have, because you won't need a part-time job, to make your neighborhood better. That's one of the things that I always tell people. You know what? Work harder at you as opposed to working hard at some things in life. It just doesn't make any sense. We were talking earlier today, and some of the things I tell people to do is, instead of using all your vacation time to vacate, use at least one of your vacation days to improve yourself. Spend that day at the bank to see what your bank can give you, since you're giving them your money. Go and negotiate lower fees on your checking account, your savings account. All these things are negotiable. Talk to your insurance companies. Get lower insurance rates. Spend time on you. And choose that to be your vacation for the day. Get budget plans for your utilities. Most utility companies do have budget plans. Even if you can afford to make the payment every month, why? If you can have an alternative to pay something a little bit less and something more even to make your budget more steady. I have lots of little finance tips.
This is very helpful.
I have lots of them and lots of them. It comes from practicing bankruptcy for 15 years. You tend to learn. I tell all my clients, they teach me more than I could probably ever teach them. And it's so positive. And one thing that you will experience when you come into the firm is we're judgment free. Again, I am learning from you. Just as you might be learning from me, I am learning from you. Everything that you tell me is in confidence, clearly, and we share ideas and we bounce them off. And yet another thing I tell everybody, no two bankruptcies are alike. They're like snowflakes. Right. So, refrain from sharing your story with your barber or your beautician, because I'm sure their experience will be a lot different than yours.
Well, you segue into home retention, and that's something that you talked about, that you work with loan modifications. We think of realtors and, housing professionals, but how can a bankruptcy help in that area?
How can a bankruptcy help? Bankruptcy is probably the most effective home retention vehicle out there. You're using the federal bankruptcy court to help you get past a foreclosure. And what the bankruptcy court does is the bankruptcy court is able to stop any foreclosure or any adverse creditor action against you. And so sometimes I have clients who come to me and the foreclosure is the next day, or the foreclosure is the next week or the next month, and they need an option. Maybe you haven't been successful at loan modification. Maybe you haven't been able to get a contract on your short sale, but you do know that you don't want your house to go to foreclosure. So one of the things that we can do is we can file a bankruptcy, Chapter 7 or Chapter 13, depending on what our ultimate goal is, to stop a foreclosure sale and to buy yourself more time to either get the house sold or work a loan modification out. Chapter 13, again, is a reorganization. So if you file a Chapter 13, the bankruptcy court will allow you 5 years to repay your mortgage arrears and allow you to stay in the house. One of the key things, though, is bankruptcy cannot change your mortgage payment. So if your mortgage payment is more than you can afford to begin with, it's going to stay the same. And so we would really have to discuss whether the house is something that you can afford. However, I do encourage a Chapter 13 to get the foreclosure stopped in the event of short sale. If you want to sell that house and you need more time and the bank won't stop the foreclosure, bankruptcy court will.
Okay, interesting.
And go ahead.
No, go ahead.
One of the other things that we discussed is loan modifications. If you come to me soon enough, I like to say this, a couple things.
What's soon enough? Now give us some time frame.
The time you miss the first payment. As soon as you miss the first payment, most attorneys I know, if you get to us before you really get in deep, it's going to save you lots of money, lots of time. You're going to have sleep nights. You're not going to be sleepless because you're going to be able to take things into consideration. And no, one thing, information is free. So you come to me and I'll give you all the information you need. However, if you miss that first payment and you're missing that payment because you just don't have the money, that second payment isn't going to come. Don't go out and get a payday loan. Talk to me first. Don't go out and borrow money from someone. Talk to me first. Talking to me is free. So take that step and just call us and say, hey, can we have a sit down? A loan modification is where we work with the mortgage company to change your mortgage payment. A loan modification can change your mortgage payment. It can change what you actually owe to the mortgage company. Sometimes we're able to get principal reductions, which is if you owe $300,000 on a $200,000 house, we could possibly get the bank to reduce your mortgage balance by $100,000 to your current market value. So that's a positive. Sometimes it's a forbearance where the mortgage company will agree to let you go a year without making a payment. And then that 13th month you start making a payment, and it might be a different payment, but hopefully what we're hoping happens in the 12-month period is more income or something in your finances has to change.
Does that change your interest rate?
It can. No, right now most interest rates are going low. And one key thing about that, because I try to get all the information you need. Some of us don't need low interest rates because guess what happens when you get a low interest rate? You get a lower interest deduction. And if you've been relying on that interest deduction not to owe IRS or the state of Maryland, it could backfire.
Oh, interesting.
It could backfire because I've had people get loan modifications and get that interest down to 2%, and then they go, I owe taxes this year. And I go, look at your tax returns and see what the difference is. And the difference is approximately $15,000, $16,000 in interest deduction. That's gone now because they did a loan modification which lowered their interest rate. So everything has a front and back side. And you have to get that information so that you could be fully aware and knowledgeable as to what it is you're doing. Don't go signing stuff and agreeing to stuff just because someone at a bank in some office in Arizona told you it's best for you. That's the other thing, don't become friends with the bank. The bank is out to make money. They won't come to your birthday party. They're not going to come when your daughter gets married. They are not your friend. They are doing a job, and that's the important thing. They're going to do their job effectively, whether or not it's beneficial to you.
Interesting.
And that's important to know.
Well, you talked about payday loans, like what are the risks of having payday loans? And, sometimes you need that money. You need it today. And if you don't have it today, you can't move on.
Okay, so caveat, don't shoot the messenger. Payday loans are no good. The reality is, if you need the money and you just need something to hold you over to the next payday, just wait till the next payday. It's going to typically be 14 days away at most. At most, 14 days away. Right. I'm not quite sure what the issue would be that you need it within 14 days. But again, call us and we'll see if there's something else you can do. Because the payday loan interest rates, I've seen them be, oh goodness, I've seen one. I just saw one this past week. It was 799% interest. 799% interest. And that's just not worth it. $500 and you're going to repay $4,500 isn't worth it. What you need to do is just be fully informed as to what you're doing. And right now the law allows for fair dealing. So basically the law says if you are knowledgeable and aware of what you're signing, it's legal. It's just capitalism at its best. And so what the payday loan companies are doing now is they'll write that interest rate in like 70 font and then it is bold. And so there's no way that you can't say that you didn't see it. It's there. But a lot of times we want that $500 so bad that we just go ahead and we give in. If you're borrowing the money for some reason, like to pay a car note or to pay a car, call me, because there's something you can do besides the payday loan. If you're doing it for some reason, like I can't even fathom a reason that would make me sign a 700% interest rate on a $500 note. So I'm just gonna say don't.
Well, we're going to come back and we're going to take a short break, and this has been very insightful, so we want to hear more.
Will I always be working weekends just to stay out of debt?
Is a great college for our kids?
Out of the question?
Is the American dream
Out of our reach?
Not if we can help it. We're the National Endowment for Financial Education, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping people just like you get smart about their money. Log on to smartaboutmoney.org today and start taking control of your financial life.
Hello, everyone, and we're back with Chat with a Lawyer, where lawyers give practical advice to everyday people. And we're talking with Kasey about loan modifications. This is money, money, money. We've been learning so much. So let's get back into it. Loan modifications, tell us more about it.
Okay, we are talking about loss mitigation avenues, and what that is, a loss mitigation is how do you cut the losses that you're getting ready, to suffer when it comes to your home. So when you call the mortgage company, once you're behind, you'll reach a loss mitigation department, and they will give you several options, one of which is a loan modification, one of which is forbearance or deferment. You might get a deed in lieu or possibly a short sale option. Those are the 5 top options.
Now, can you go through each of those and explain?
Sure will. Let's do the easiest one first. Deed in lieu, I think, is the easiest one. If you get so lucky as to be put in a position where the mortgage company will allow you a deed in lieu, take it. What that means is the mortgage company wants you to sign over your deed back to them in lieu of them foreclosing on your property. So you won't incur foreclosure fees and costs. There's no extra attorney's fees. They'll send you a copy of your deed. You'll sign off on it, and you'll send it back to the mortgage company. Quick and simple. And that's how you get rid of it in a deed in lieu situation. And that's only if you know for sure you no longer want your home.
And you would have to move out subsequently.
You would have to move out subsequent to that. The mortgage company would give you a timeline, generally anywhere between 3 to 6 months. They actually will make you pay something nominal, not a huge amount, but something nominal to allow you the opportunity to build up some money to be able to move. But a deed in lieu, I think, is a great option if you are fully positive that you no longer want the home.
What about your credit? Does it impact your credit?
It does impact your credit, because what your credit report will say, another whole issue, we can have another whole half an hour on credit reporting. What your credit report will say, account settled for less than full. What that just basically tells all your creditors and anyone pulling your credit report is that you settled this account, the mortgage account, for something less than what you actually owed. And that can stay on your credit report for up to 7 years. Credit report connotations from the bank stays on there for up to 7 years. From the date of last activity. Again, we'll get into that when we do our credit reporting show. But it is a positive way, because I think at that point, instead of your credit going this way to the left, it's going to go to the right, and it's going to go up higher, because you'll get to start fresh. That balance will zero out because you won't owe them any money, and you can just start all over again. Something reasonable, as long as you keep your other accounts current and do whatever you're supposed to do.
Interesting. Okay, so what's the next option?
The next option, let's see, as far as easy, I would say deferment or forbearance. Deferment is when the mortgage company will decide to put the arrears, and the arrears are what you owe in the back. So for instance, if you miss 6 months and your mortgage payment is $1,000 a month, they'll put the 6 months to $6,000 plus whatever fees and costs on the end of your mortgage. And sometimes that means they'll put an additional 6 months on the end of your mortgage. So instead of a typical 30-year mortgage, you'll have 30 years and 6 months. Or they could possibly do a balloon note. So what that would mean is that at the end of your 30 years, you owe them a check for $6,000, one big fat check. But that's a deferment, and they're just deferring on collecting that payment at that time. So that's not a bad idea sometimes, as long as your income, again, is there to sustain the mortgage payment. You don't want to promise the bank that you're going to do something that you can't do. And that's a big thing. People get so excited and so just hungry for not being collected upon at that moment, that they promise to do something that they know they cannot do. So don't ever promise to do something that you know you cannot do. So if you can't afford the mortgage, you just can't afford the mortgage unless you get a part-time job or renter or some type of income coming in excess of what you currently have. So that would be your deferment. Your next option.
Well, what about credit? Now let's get back to the credit part. Now, if you defer and you make an agreement with the bank, do they report it to the credit agency?
If you defer, they can report to the credit reporting agency that you are late, because those 6 months are actually late and they're rolling late. Because a deferment will, although the bank said that they're not going to call you every day for the next 6 years to collect this money, it is late, and so it just continues to roll. And so what you would hope is that you don't have to wait the 30 years to pay the 6 months, that you could pay it sometime sooner. However, it is late until it's paid. And one of my rules of thumb is if the mortgage is due on the 1st, it's late on the 2nd. A lot of people say, well, Kasey, they give me till the 15th. What they're giving you is an opportunity to put it in the mailbox and send it off. However, legally, based on the paperwork you signed when you went to settlement, it's late on the 2nd. It's late.
But they couldn't report it to the credit agency at this.
They probably won't, but they can, because it's late. It just really is. It is, and I tend to want to be really black and white with my clients. I'm not going to make you feel good and all comfortable and warm and fuzzies. It's late. It just is. It's due on the 1st. You paid on the 2nd. You paid it late, and I know. And I love you all, you know that. But and we sit there and we argue, and they go, Kasey, but I paid it. I'm like, you paid it late. Let's go. What are we doing? And you know, so that's just getting the habit of paying ahead of time.
Right.
Late shouldn't even be in our vocabulary when it comes to our bills. So we did deed in lieu. We did deferment.
Right.
Another option is forbearance.
Okay.
And the forbearance is when the mortgage company just forbears or just agrees not to collect on this money right now. And it's usually a shorter amount of time. The deferment is they take the money and they put it on the end. They actually take the money, theoretically, and put it someplace else. They defer it. Forbearance is the money's still there. They're just not going to call you every day and ask you where it is. So you're going to continually be late. And in order to successfully do a forbearance, I always tell people, listen, are you getting ready to get that money anytime soon? Is someone getting ready to, give you money? Did a rich uncle decide to give everybody $6,000 for Christmas? Something has to change, and it has to be in stone to convince me, at least. I mean, you telling me, oh, so-and-so's going to give it to me? No, will not work for Kasey. You will have to give me a letter. It had to be notarized. Uncle John said on June 1, everyone's getting $6,000. That's the only way that I'd agree for you to do a forbearance. But some things happen. People know that they're getting an annuity check and it's coming soon, or whatever their distribution from their job is coming soon, or they're getting taxes are coming soon. Even though that's again another conversation that we'll have later. Tax refund checks are the bane of my existence. Anyway, because just quickly, let's just talk about what a tax refund is. Let's put a little pin right there in forbearance. A tax refund is money that you gave to the IRS all year long that they're giving back to you. So if you tell me that you got a $12,000 tax refund check, and some of you guys do, that means every month for the past 12 months, you could have taken home an extra $1,000. That's all a tax refund check is, hence the word refund. They're giving you back money you gave them. And most of us need that money in our checks. So don't overpay the Internal Revenue Service or the state of Maryland. Keep that money in your pocket. Talk to an accountant, a CPA, and to see what you could put your exemptions at, so that at the end of the day, you can owe them something nominal, or they can give you something small. Let's just say no more than $100. But most people live where they need that money.
Right.
I know, everybody thinks between January 1 and April 15th is just another Christmas. But, it just drives me absolutely crazy. So I'm like, you struggled all year. Let's talk about this. You struggled all year, and that $1,000 was the amount of money that was the money you needed to make sure everybody got paid.
Now, isn't it usually credits that allow someone to?
Some of them are credits. A lot of clients who get that amount of money are getting that based on, and that's the thing. So your exemptions could be really either small or large based on your credits. If they're anticipated credits, you can work your exemptions to make sure that you get exactly what you're supposed to do. But a lot of times, They could be deductions that you are entitled to every year, so you can plan your taxing. Finance is a lot to do with the financial world is forecasting.
Okay.
And you can forecast what you're making this year, or you can forecast what you've made last year to determine what your deductions are or your credits, things like that. So it just takes a little planning. Let's take the pen out and go back to forbearance.
Yes. Now.
Wallace, like, we just keep rolling here. We just keep rolling.
She keeps giving us more good advice. Well, so let's talk about forbearance.
Okay, so forbearance, they just agree not to go after you right then and there, and then you can use whatever money you have coming in and to bring your account current, and that'll work out. That's one of your loss mitigation ways. Another one is short sales.
Now let's go back to the forbearance. I've asked the question all the time. What about credit?
Credit
report?
same
So,
situation.
same situation.
You are late. You are late. It'll report on your credit report that you are late.
And you could work that out with the bank to say, well, since I've agreed to pay, can you?
Can you take that off? Yes.
Yeah.
By all means, use one of those vacation days, like I said earlier. Call the credit reporting agency, call the bank and say, listen, this was the deal they gave me.
Okay.
Can we change this? And I would say 80% of the time they'll go along with it, especially if you have brought the account current. So that's a good thing.
That's interesting. Okay, so the next
The next two are actually one of the two hottest topics in our area right now. One is loan modification and the other one is short sales. We'll talk about short sales first. Short sale is when you decide or you agree with the mortgage company to sell your home for less than what you owe.
Okay.
That is a short sale. You are selling it for shorter than the full amount. Short sale requires the use of a realtor. I usually advise people to call a realtor, an experienced one in short sales, because it can be very difficult. But find an experienced realtor who handles short sales, and they will come to your home, look at the home, check it out, assess the value, and give you some advice as to what you should sell your house for based on what your house looks like and the neighborhood. So let's just go with your house looking like you can sell it for $200,000 and you owe $300,000. So what the realtor does is they put it on the market and they list it for $200,000. You have people come through and you get contracts. Once you agree on a contract for the $200,000, you submit your contract and all your paperwork to the mortgage company. And when we discuss paperwork, for a short sale, a lot like the loan modification, you will have to prove to the mortgage company that you are unable to pay the $300,000 that you actually owe. You have to prove to the mortgage company that the house is actually worth $200,000 and not $300,000. So there is a lot of paperwork involved.
Do you need a lawyer to prove to is this a realtor's job?
It can be the realtor's job. I like to do it myself. Clients come in and they can retain me and I can work this out for them. One of the benefits of hiring an attorney to do your short sale or to negotiate the short sale with the mortgage company is we know the terms. We know the lingo. We know what to say. We know what they can't say. We know everything. And so you have some confidence in us that we can negotiate this out in your best interest. And we can also give you post-sale advice.
Okay.
What the law allows the mortgage company to do, what the mortgage company can't do, things like that, what the realtor can and can't do. And sometimes in this arena, lawyers aren't necessarily the realtor's best friends, but we're only looking out for the client's best interest. But we can have a good working relationship. We always do.
And this is why why the realtor is working on getting
exactly. So the realtor should handle the sale of the home, and you can use the attorney, myself, to handle the negotiation with the mortgage company as far as the price that they'll agree to. And the price they'll agree to, again, is premised upon your inability to pay the actual mortgage and the current market value of your home and the homes around it. Some of the information and documentation that you have to provide at that point is an appraisal, current pay stubs, financial hardship letters. The mortgage company wants you to tell them exactly what happened. And in this area, we have a whole wide variety of what could happen. Loss of income, death, divorce, all kinds of things. We have people, I see clients who last year made $1 million because they had a government contract. This year, because of the recession, that contract's gone. So they were living like they should have lived based on the money they made at the time, but now the money situation is different. And so that's the information that the mortgage company wants to know, that $1 million contract is no longer in existence. There's money there, but it can't support necessarily the home that you once had. So we have to give them pay stubs, bank statements, because they want to see a historical record of your money and what's being banked and what you spend it on. And that's another budget issue that I have with clients, and we love to talk about it. Going to McDonald's isn't necessarily the best thing every day. I love Starbucks, but I don't know if I can afford a $5 venti
We love our Starbucks.
latte every day. I don't know, that's just a lot of money. Sometimes it makes a big impact on your budget. And one of the things you can do is don't do it for a month and see. Sometimes our habits are what keeps us from paying our bills on time. Cigarettes are very expensive. Those types of things. And sometimes it's the habits that we don't pick up like we should. For instance, everyone who went in January and signed up at the club, the gym, for $20 a month, that money comes out of your bank account every month. And that's $20 you could save if you're not going to go to the gym. So there's a lot of things that get taken into consideration when we do short sales. Loan modifications are a lot like short sales, except that in that instance, you're going to keep the house. You're going to retain the house. So what we do is we ask for all the same documentation and paperwork, and we tell the mortgage company that because of a decrease in income or whatever circumstance happened, when we're unable to pay the amount that we used to be able to pay. So the bank at that point will allow us to make arrangements to pay something less. They'll lower our interest rate, they will re-amortize our loan, and maybe we can get a shorter payment or lower payment, something more comfortable for us to afford.
Well, thank you so much, Kasey. I mean, this has been very insightful, so we could sit here all day. We're going to have to call you back. We're going to have you back, and we're going to have that credit report show.
We'll have that show, yes. I'll agree to do that, too. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Kasey.
Thank
for
you.
Such great information, and in this county, we definitely need it, so we'll be looking to you. So contact her. All right. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.